Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Welcome back to episode, and I love these round numbers, you guys know I love these round numbers, episode number 80 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. We are 20 away from 100, huge things ahead. It looks like, as long as everything goes according to plan, episode 100 coming out in 2025. That is super exciting, but anyways, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Welcome back to episode number 80 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Lots and lots of things to talk about here, including, some things about Marvel, obviously, and then Harry Potter. We got the new cast announcement for Harry Potter, but talking about the MCU TV shows, talking about The Last of Us, wrapping that up as well for season 2, and of course talking about Knives Out 3, Wake Up Dead Man, and talking about the box office a little bit. So it's an exciting episode, a lot of different franchises, I guess, realms of pop culture to dig into, and I'm really excited. So again, as always, if you haven't subscribed to the Access Blockbusters YouTube channel, if that's where you're watching, or if you're not watching as well, make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and let me know in the comments down below what you think about any of the topics. And also, if you're interested, because if you're listening to this and it's coming out on a Monday or a Tuesday, the video format, the entire audio form of the podcast comes out early. It comes out as soon as the first segments start coming out. So Saturday mornings, if you're interested, it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast. So if you're interested in listening to that early, that's there as well. And yeah, leave a rating, leave a review, and that's about it for the intro. Let's get into today's topics. Alrighty, guys, it has been 10 years almost exactly since the release of season 1 of Jessica Jones. And today, in a segment on the Access Blockbusters Pod, we are going to be taking some time to take a look back on the second standalone series in the Netflix Marvel Universe. Now, apparently, and I mean, based on what we've seen from Daredevil Born Again, that now the show is canon to the MCU, the original Daredevil series, and now with the news that Jessica Jones is going to be joining Daredevil in Daredevil Born Again Season 2, the assumption is here that Jessica Jones is now, the show Jessica Jones is going to be canon as well. The 3 seasons and of course her role in the Defenders is now going to be canon in the MCU. So, continuing on with our Defenders saga rewatch, which is what I've been doing in the background of course producing our weekly podcast episode, and of course producing quietly, just in case we need a kind of a rainy day, the DCEU rewatch, which we'll hopefully be releasing new episodes of in the near future. But in the meantime, in terms of television as well, I've been doing a rewatch of the Defender saga. And actually, to be completely transparent with you guys before we dive into Jessica Jones season 1, I actually haven't seen a majority of the Defender saga. When I originally came out, I watched Daredevil season 1, Daredevil season 2, The Defenders, and then Daredevil season 3. And to be honest, the main reason why was just because A, there was a huge volume of shows to watch, and at that point I just didn't have time or didn't want to watch it, and because also B, I watched the first episode of Jessica Jones at the time, and I wasn't a huge fan of it. And maybe it was just because it wasn't what I was expecting based on Daredevil, because I love Daredevil, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. And so I decided, I was doing a rewatch of Daredevil because I wanted to do a rewatch of Daredevil and then, dive right into Daredevil Born Again Season 1. And hopefully we'll do that at the end of this whole Defender saga rewatch. And who knows, honestly, we might not even get to every single show in the Defender saga before Daredevil Season 2, Daredevil Born Again Season 2 comes out. But anyways, my goal was to do a rewatch of all of the Daredevil shows and then dive into Daredevil Season 1 again as a rewatch. And I decided, let's just give the Defender saga, let's at the very least give Jessica Jones a try. And I'm glad I did, because I didn't even know that Jessica Jones was going to be confirmed for Daredevil Born Again Season 2. I just started watching the series for the first time, actually at the very beginning of Daredevil Born Again Season 1, not even knowing what the ending of Daredevil Born Again Season 1 was going to be, not even knowing that Jessica Jones was going to be confirmed for Season 2. And so here we are. I watched Jessica Jones for the first time. I guess I rewatched episode 1 only. And let's talk about it, guys. This is going to be a spoiler breakdown. It's a revisiting, right? Because I put in the title Jessica Jones Season 1 10 years later, because it's been 10 years. Jessica Jones Season 1 released in 2015. I know it's not exactly 10 years, but I'm just going off the year 2015 to 2025. Let's talk about Jessica Jones Season 1. And this is going to be from the perspective of someone who hasn't seen the whole show. I saw her in The Defenders, but didn't know much else about her. So, Jessica Jones Season 1. Full spoilers, obviously, for the show for the first season. And I haven't seen the other season, so I don't really know what happens, although I got a couple things spoiled for me as I was doing research. And that's unfortunate, but, we'll live with that. These shows have been out for a while, so it's kind of on me at this point. So, Jessica Jones season 1, obviously played by Kristen Ritter. We have Kilgrave, played by David Tennant, and then obviously other supporting characters as well. I don't know all the actors and actresses' names, but, we have Trish, we have Hogarth, played by Carrie Ann Moss, and then Malcolm. Other characters also show up, like I don't remember the actress's name. I never remember because she's just Ashley from The Boys, but she has a role in here as well. And then quick cameo from Rosario Dawson as Claire Temple in the finale. We have Simpson, the police officer, turned ally, turned villain, I guess, at the end of the show, and other supporting characters as well. So this show, right, follows Jessica Jones, who is a private investigator, and she is she has a dark past, as most of these heroes in the Defenders saga, tend to have. And she's very clearly haunted by that past because Kilgrave returns into her life. So she was under Kilgrave's control for a while, and then she goes on these adventures. And Luke Cage, I forgot to mention, Mike Coulter is a big part of this series. He's basically I would say the biggest supporting character in the show, next to maybe Trish. But Mike Coulter as Luke Cage is a very prominent character in the show, and he's intertwined into the story because Jessica Jones killed his wife under the control of Kilgrave. So really, this show, right? Because I didn't know what to expect, really, other than just based on the first episode. It's going to be a little bit more cynical, right? Jessica Jones. Well, Charlie Cox's Matt Murdock is, I wouldn't say he's an optimist. He does believe in the best, in humanity. Jessica Jones is a very cynical character. And right off the bat, I think one of the reasons why it was originally so hard for me to get on board with the show after watching the first episode all those years ago was just because this is a character that is not going to endear you to her. You're watching the show because, Kristen Ritter is a great performer, great actress, and she does a great job. But this isn't a character that is going to make you go, yeah, like rooting for her. You're rooting for her because of her circumstances and her, the anti-hero vigilante sort of vibe of I'm going to make things right despite all the terrible things I've done. And that's good and all. But it's not the same as Daredevil, who has, the moral compass of I'm really struggling with this, but I want to be a hero. I want to be a good person. And I think that is one of the key struggles. That's one of the reasons why I just don't think Jessica Jones season 1 is as good as any of the seasons of Daredevil. The original show, I don't know about Daredevil Born Again, to be quite honest with you. It's only been about a month and a half, so need to let that simmer for a little bit. But in terms of the Netflix shows, I don't remember the Defenders that well. But I don't think that Jessica Jones season 1 is nearly as good as any of the seasons of Daredevil. And I think that it's just because while I think Kristen Ritter does a good job of showing the multidimensionality of Jessica, the show, she's painted as a character who is just so down on life and so jaded that it makes it hard for us to get behind her. Just in terms of rooting for her. But she's an interesting character, and I think that's the reason that we're following her in the first place. The other thing, and I hate to just keep comparing this to Daredevil because, I don't want to do that, but it does, I think it's a good metric, at least for me, just to compare what I've seen from this universe, to what I'm going to see with the new shows. And I think one of the biggest detriments, too, that I realized of why this show wasn't captivating me, hooking me, on making me want to watch a new episode every single night. I watched this show over the span of maybe 3 or 4 weeks. It took a while, honestly, and it was because of a couple things. Number one, and I'll get to the things I really liked about the show in just a second, but I just want to clear these things out of the way before we do. Number one, though, one of the reasons why it was a little harder for me to get on board with the show is because of the side characters. You don't realize this until you take a step back and see that it's missing, but the side characters in Daredevil are so crucial to the show. That's why it was baffling when we found out that in the original concept of Daredevil Born Again, that Foggy and Karen weren't even going to be there. They were going to kill Foggy off screen, and Punisher, John Bernthal was like, no, I don't want to do what you're making me do here. This is terrible. This is not what the Punisher character is all about. And it's because the DNA of these shows are the side characters: Foggy, Karen, Punisher, Frank Castle, Ben Urich, in the first season of Daredevil, right? And all of these characters, come together, Elektra, to make a really rich tapestry of unique personalities, even Stick, right? But the core characters of obviously, Nelson, Murdoch, and Paige, right? Those three create that core of why you care not just about Matt, but about everything that he's going through the lens of also the characters that surround him. And to be honest with you, I don't think any character in Jessica Jones season 1 really elevated to that level. I like Trish enough. I don't really think that I don't really care about her that much as a character. I care about her insofar as she's Jessica's friend. But at the very end of the show, right, when Jessica's like, I love you, I'm like, I get that, on the paper. But I don't really see that connection emotionally, if that makes sense. Other characters like Malcolm, what's her name? Robin, Ashley from The Boys. Other characters like, Simpson. Honestly, Simpson, I know he's going to be headed for a villainous arc. That's what I've heard. I couldn't really care less about him. And his turn too, from, person who was Killgraved to, raving, drug-addled, steroid using, whatever he's doing, supervillain, crazy maniac, was so sudden to me. And it came out of nowhere. And again, perhaps it was because I was watching the show in spurts. But when I got to that part of the show, I think it was maybe episode 8, 7, 8, 9, whatever. I was like, what in the world is going on here? Like, that's so bizarre. The one big bright spot here, and I'm glad it is, because we're going to hopefully get to his show in just a second, is Luke Cage. I think Luke Cage was done great. I think that Mike Coulter was a really steadying presence in the show. And when he got Killgraved, it was scary. And when you get to hear about his backstory, it's tragic, and the bar gets blown up and everything. It's great. I really enjoyed everything about Luke Cage in the show. But the other side characters it made it hard to care about a lot of other things that were going on throughout the season. And the other thing, I mentioned two things that made it hard for me to really get captivated by the show, was the repetitive nature of the story. And I'm going to tie this back to Killgrave. I haven't talked about Killgrave kind of intentionally, but let's talk about David Tennant as Killgrave. First of all, performance. Great performance. He is terrifying. I mean, you believe that this guy is the worst of the worst in humanity. In his own twisted way, he believes that he's humanity's savior or whatever, or I don't even know what he believes, but he wants to be with Jessica Jones and so badly and all that kind of stuff. You believe that, right? You believe that he, in his twisted mind, thinks that there's a chance that he can love Jessica. And I'm all kudos to David Tennant. He gives a fantastic performance. That being said, the character and the development, there's only so much you can do with a kind of psychopath, murderous character, right? Because Kingpin is I don't think he's a psychopath, a sociopath, or whatever he is, with murderous tendencies, but he believes that there is some kind of self-righteousness in him to bring this city of New York up, and he has artistic tastes and things like that. It brings a very complicated version of that character to the screen, where you're like, okay, I mean, he's obviously crazy in his own way, but it's not like pure, Joker level, David Tennant, Killgrave kind of level. And there's only so much you can do with a character like that across 13 episodes of television. And I got frustrated with the show because it felt like it was cycling through this process of, let's find Killgrave, gets captured, escapes. Let's find Killgrave, gets captured, escapes. Let's find Killgrave, gets captured, escapes. And that goes on 2 or 3 or 4 times, that by the time you get to the last episode, I'm like, I feel like I've been watching the same show for the last few episodes. And I think that was a little bit frustrating. Now you get to the part at the end where it's like, okay, his powers are kind of a pathogen, and he's trying to enhance his powers, and that is fine. I think it's a little bit sci-fi for a show that was in general grounded, other than obviously the powers that the characters have. But, I think that was the part of the show where I was like, it's a little bit too late for that, And I think that I was a little bit annoyed by that. But again, those are things that I think generally didn't work for me. Let's talk about things that did work for me. Again, performances in general by the leads, Mike Coulter, Kristen Ritter, and David Tennant especially, were great. Fantastic. And I do think that, like I said before, with how you're not, as emotionally attached to Jessica Jones as you were with Charlie Cox as Matt Murdock, that the show still does a good job of showing that, she has pain, she has a backstory, she's an interesting character, and I think that the show does a really good job of that. I think that the way that the show is framed, is taught, and also the way that they are able to use Killgrave as a character to exemplify his powers is really effective at times and very scary. I should also mention Carrie-Anne Moss as Hogarth, another character that I wasn't really invested in at all. Anyways, I just remember that. But, I think that in general, right, the reason I kept coming back to the show, I mean, other than, wanting to do this segment, but the reason I kept coming back just as a viewer was because I think that there is enough intrigue and interest here, and the concept was unique enough, right? A guy who can control people and do what he wants and is obsessed with this woman, Jessica Jones, and has done, again, some heinous things. but it in his own head believes that he is doing this in the right way, or at least for his own self-interest, I think is a very interesting concept. And I think that it is executed well for the most part. And I think that it helps to have actors who are able to deliver on that promise. And again, some of the scenarios are so interesting to see, okay, how can we get around a character like this, right? Putting him in that prison where you electrocute him, and also the fact that Jessica Jones at some point is not able to be affected by his powers, and like who is going to be affected by his powers, and who can you trust, all of that kind of stuff. And even the episode where Jessica is trying to turn him into a hero, all of those concepts, super interesting. I just think that the overall story, this is a show that felt like it could have been shortened by 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, because I just felt like we were doing the same thing. We're running the same thing back in circles. And I appreciate, especially now in the age of 6 to 8 episodes of television, that this show is 13 episodes. It just felt like the story kind of ran out at a certain point, and we were just doing the same thing of captured, escapes, captured, escapes, captured, escapes. And I think that there's only so much we can do from there. So I enjoyed the show enough, and I'm very glad I watched it, because, or at least this first season, and we'll see where we go. I'm going to have to get through a lot more television. I'm currently rewatching Daredevil season 2, and so we'll hopefully talk about that in a few weeks, but I have to get through a lot more television to get to Jessica Jones season 2. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I think that what the biggest thing for me is I now understand Jessica Jones very much as a character. I'm excited to see her interact with Matt Murdock, because I think that's a big strength where, we get to see those two personalities clash. And I don't remember that much from the Defenders. So I think that's exciting. And we'll see where we go from there. So guys, what did you think of Jessica Jones season 1? When was the last time you watched it? And are you interested in rewatching it? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, one of those movies that has quietly flown under the radar for 2025. I didn't even include it, I think, in my most anticipated movies of 2025, because I just didn't know if it was going to come out this year. They've been so ambiguous with the release date for Knives Out 3 that it's been flying under the radar. But we've known for a little bit that Netflix at least intended to release Knives Out 3 in 2025. They did release Knives Out 2. I think this was 2022, if not mistaken, or 2023. I think it's 2022. Yeah. Which is when they released Glass Onion. So that was Knives Out 2. And so to say, I love Knives Out, right? It's one of my favorite movies of all time. One of these days, I'm desperately trying to do a segment, if there's time in the week to dedicate a segment on my favorite movies, and maybe talk about some of my other favorite movies as well. And Knives Out certainly makes that list. The ingenuity of taking a very simple whodunit and flipping it on its head. For those of you who haven't seen it, this is, I guess, a spoiler for the movie, but I would highly recommend going out and seeing it. But, the idea that you reveal what happened at the end, the murder, very early, but then it's about tracing the steps back throughout the rest of the movie. I think that that's super interesting and super smart. Glass Onion, I liked. I think that the twist with the twins was interesting, but I didn't like it as much, but I still liked it. And I think that one of the biggest just areas of potential that this movie has is that it is able to center on Benoit Blanc. It's a very tried and true trope of Sherlock Holmes or someone like Poirot from Agatha Christie. It's a very tried and true trope where you have the main character, but the cast of supporting characters, the main detective, I should say, and the cast of supporting characters around them changes every single adventure. And it's just great potential. And Rian Johnson, say what you will, I love The Last Jedi. No, I know not everyone else does. I love The Last Jedi. I think what he did with Knives Out and Knives Out 2 is just fantastic. So keep making these movies as long as you want. But Knives Out 3, again, quietly one of my most anticipated movies of the year. And then, we got a few weeks ago, or not a few months ago, the title is Wake Up Dead Man. Again, very cryptic. I mean, when we heard the title of the second movie, Glass Onion, no one knew what that meant. And then it revealed itself. But since then, it's been super quiet. I mean, you would have thought, and I know that it's releasing on Netflix with a very limited theatrical release. So it's not like they needed to put a theatrical release date on the calendar way in advance, I suppose. But it's getting up there. I mean, if it was going to release in 2025, we're less than 7 months away, I think, or just about 7 months away from the end of 2025. And so, you'd think a trailer would be coming out at some point and a release date. And so then we get some cryptic news. Now, by the time this segment and this podcast come out, the news might have changed. This might be a teaser to an actual trailer coming out that would reveal the information we're going to talk about here. But it looks like the release date has been very subtly and cleverly revealed. And I think this is really fun. So on the social media accounts for this movie, I believe, they posted just a very cryptic teaser. And the teaser was a quote. It's a quote from the Bible. from the book of Proverbs, chapter 12, verse 12. And this is what and that's going to be important later on. But this is what the quote says. Quote, "The wicked desire the stronghold of evildoers, but the root of the righteous endures." It's very philosophical. It's very existential. It's very moral. And who knows what this means, right? I'm sure that when the movie comes out, it'll make more sense. The thing that people have been keying on, though, is Proverbs 12:12. It's a very specific quote, right? Proverbs 12:12, that I'm sure has some significance to the movie. But what people are beginning to put together, and I think is 100% true, again, no one's confirmed this from the studio, but I think this is 100% true, is 12/12 is December 12th, right, in terms of dates. And December 12th is a Friday. Now, if December 12th was another random day, a Wednesday, a Monday, a Tuesday, I don't know if this would have meant as much. The fact that this is on a Friday, generally when 95% of movies are released, some are released on Tuesdays or Wednesdays and holiday weekends and Thursdays for Thanksgiving, but most movies are released on Fridays, leads me to believe that this is the release date for the film. And it's a very subtle and clever way of revealing it. So I think we can take to the bank, again, no one's confirmed it, but I think we can take to the bank that Wake Up Dead Man will be releasing in theaters for a limited time and then releasing on Netflix on December 12th, 2025, which means I think we should, based on this teaser as well, we should be getting some more marketing material shortly. Like I said, by the time this segment comes out, this podcast comes out, we might have even gotten a trailer. I don't know. Maybe this is a precursor. So I'm very excited for that because, again, I'm very much looking forward to this movie. Guys, what do you think of, or first of all, are you excited for Wake Up Dead Man? Are you excited to see the return of Benoit Blanc? I am very much excited to see it. And let me know what you think about this little cryptic teaser and the release date in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, by the time this is coming out, it's going to have been a little bit since Memorial Day weekend. So just wanted to talk about this, though, because I think that it's hugely symbolic of where we are in the movie release calendar season, because I believe that talking about the box office weekend for Memorial Day weekend is usually an indicator of where we're at and the summer season starting. But more specifically this year in particular, it started out a little bit dreary, I'm not going to lie, with the box office in general. There were a couple surprises, like Sinners doing spectacularly based on its projections and its budget. But then, the big movies like Snow White bombed, and these are all, interestingly, Disney movies. Snow White kind of bombed, and then Captain America Brave New World didn't do that well. It barely crossed $400 million. It looks like Thunderbolts is also going to be in that same boat of barely crossing $400 million. Egg on my face for thinking that both of these films were going to cross $700 million. Don't look at that prediction again. It's on the YouTube channel. It's on the internet forever. But anyways, it wasn't starting out super well in terms of box office. And so one had to wonder, well, okay, so if these films aren't making that much money, is Fantastic Four going to kind of stutter? Is Superman going to lag behind? And then comes Memorial Day weekend, where I thought Mission Impossible would do pretty well. But in doing research for that predictions for the box office of 2025, I noticed that Mission Impossible films, they're successful, but they're not nearly as successful as I remember them being. I think the highest grossing one was something like $700 million. And these are films that I thought could make billions of dollars. I thought the last one, I was like, wow, this should be $1 billion film. And I think it just barely made $600 million, which is, again, it's a really good amount. But it's not nearly the amount of money that I expected it to make. And then Lilo & Stitch, like I've been saying, and you can go check out my review, which, by the way, Lilo & Stitch is my favorite movie of the year thus far, and I'm not ashamed to say it. I get it. I haven't seen the original in a long time, so I don't have that same nostalgia, and I wasn't, comparing it to the original. I get it. I'm a very different audience member than those of you who have seen the original recently. But all that being said, it's still, it's a family-friendly movie. It's getting pretty good reviews, and the box office returns for that movie are astounding. Now, they're going to, in this article, I'm reading The Hollywood Reporter, they're going to count, I believe, all 4 days. So going from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then Monday for Memorial Day. Usually they only count 3 days, obviously. But for these holiday weekends like July 4th and whatnot, and Christmas season as well, they usually count the 4 days in total. Thanksgiving as well, they count the Friday, the Thursday before, whatnot. And so listen to these numbers. And I'm just going to read directly from this Hollywood Reporter article. Lilo & Stitch blew away all expectations with a record-smashing 4-day domestic debut of $192.7 million and a jaw-dropping $361.3 million globally. Now, we're going to put that into context in just a second. But first, Before we get to that, I'm going to finish the quote. Quote, while Mission Impossible The Final Reckoning opened to a series best 79 million domestically, again, a little bit lower than I would have thought, and a franchise high 191 million globally, according to weekend actuals. Mission Impossible's final domestic tally was up from Sunday's estimate of 77.5 million. The numbers include a 3-day weekend gross of 145.5 million for LILO, and 64 million for Final Reckoning, so that's just counting those 3 days. And then obviously counting the extra money that those two films made on Memorial Day. And it's just astounding. For reference, right? And again, I know that Snow White was not the most beloved Disney remake, and I know that Snow White just was not the most anticipated Disney remake either. Then again, I would argue that Lilo and Stitch, while it had good marketing and good press and generally things like that, it wasn't the most anticipated movie of all time. It wasn't like a Beauty and the Beast or Lion King, which Lion King, made $1 billion, so there is that. But I mean, to come out the gates, and Lilo and Stitch made, I believe what I saw the statistic was, it made more worldwide than Snow White did in its entire run theatrically. Lilo and Stitch made more than Snow White did in 2 days. And that's crazy. I think a couple things there, right? Lilo and Stitch, beloved, did well. People liked it. Kids seemed to like it. I loved it, right? But number 2 is timing. I mean, it's not to say that, movies that come out in March aren't going to do well, but you put your movie out Memorial Day weekend. Those of us remember a few years ago, Top Gun Maverick crushed the box office around the same time. It crushed the box office. And so, Mission Impossible as well. These are, again, numbers that are not as high as I would have thought, honestly. I would have thought surely a Mission Impossible movie would have made 100 million domestically in its opening weekend. Then again, I also said, earlier, I was saying, I would have surely bet that Mission Impossible would have had a film in the franchise that would have made over $1 billion so far. And with this final one, it looks like it's not going to happen. But still, these are record numbers for the Mission Impossible franchise. And what this signals to me, I made a segment about this actually almost exactly a year ago, I think last July, about Inside Out 2, which surprised everybody to make over $1.6 billion, I believe. And I said at the time, Deadpool and Wolverine, Inside Out 2, Disney's back, right? And at the time. Now, this series is telling a little bit of a different story, but then again, Lilo and Stitch is coming to the rescue. Lilo and Stitch looks like it's going to easily cross $1 billion. By the way, I should have mentioned the Minecraft movie was the other exception of it's almost made $1 billion. So I should have said, while it's been a slow year thus far in terms of box office, the Minecraft movie has just crushed as well. But anyways, this to me really signals that while there might have been some fears, at least from my perspective, of is the box office kind of stagnating? What's going on here? Because again, Thunderbolts, right? Thunderbolts was really well received, and it's only, I think it's going to have a hard time catching Captain America: Brave New World, which is super interesting. But I think that this weekend was a reassurance that no, I think the summer is going to be fine. I think Jurassic World Rebirth, as long as it's good, is going to crush. It just reaffirms that the summer movie season is still as strong as ever. I think hopefully Elio is good, that Elio is going to do well. F1, I think, is going to do really well in late June. How to Train Your Dragon is going to do well. And I think it bodes really well for Fantastic Four and Superman in addition to that. So guys, what do you think of these record-shattering numbers for Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning? And do you guys think that this is a good sign for the summer? Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, so I don't claim to be an expert in anything, much less movies and TV, but I rather stupidly decided let's make a predictions segment for, the box office for 2025, thinking, I can look at box office precedent, I can look at numbers, and I can make a pretty accurate list. And my list is gone out the window. If you guys don't remember, you can go check it out. It was a separate segment. It was towards the end of the year, 2024, where we talked about talked about a lot of things, my ranking of 2024 movies and predicting 2025 movies in terms of anticipation, but also, like I mentioned, doing the box office predictions for 2025, I believe internationally. Yes, internationally. And taking a look at this list again, for the movies that have come out, I have screwed up really, really bad. First of all, Marvel, way underperforming. Captain America: Brave New World, I thought 650 million. It made about 415. 200 million, $250 million off. Thunderbolts, I thought, sneaky hit. And the movie was good. It was received really well. I think the marketing, they just didn't know how to market the movie. And it also had a bunch of Disney Plus characters. And it also had the asterisk. And the marketing wasn't great. And it was coming off of Captain America: Brave New World. That movie, I don't even think it's going to make $400 million. And I predicted it to make $725 million. What else is there? Lilo and Stitch. I thought $500 million, which I thought was a little bit conservative at the time of a conservative estimate, thinking, oh, it can hit $500 million. That movie is going to make $1 billion. I don't know that. I'm just saying it. I think it'll probably close in at maybe between 800 million and $1 billion, but it's going to get up there. Speaking of $1 billion, a Minecraft movie. I thought, yeah, popular video game, but other popular video games haven't done that well. Sonic didn't do that. Well, yeah, $400 million was my prediction. It made almost $1 billion. It's crazy. So, yeah, I mean, again, I don't claim to be an expert in this, but I thought let's have some fun here because I'm not trying to wipe away those old predictions. That's on the internet forever. You guys can make fun of me for those predictions forever, and we'll revisit them at the end of the year, hopefully, if I remember. But I wanted to do an updated list as we enter the summer because with Lilo and Stitch and with Mission Impossible, we talked about earlier on in the podcast of how they're kicking off the summer in a big way. Let's revisit some of those predictions and make a new top 10 list for the remaining films of 2025. And let's see how wrong I get here. I don't know. Let's just see how wrong I get here. So we're going to go through them pretty quickly. And I think that the top half I believe in still. Top couple, at least, I believe in still, but the rest, I have no idea. So, this is a new top 10 for the remaining films of 2025. Coming in at number 10 is Five Nights at Freddy's 2. I predicted it at $350 million, I think. Let me just scroll through the list here. Where is it? It's towards the bottom, actually, which is kind of surprising. Yeah, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, $350 million. I believe in that, I think. I don't know. I think that's a pretty fair estimate, so we'll leave it at that. Tron Ares is up next at number 9. I put it at $350 million as well. I think that one can bump up a little bit just because of the marketing, and this is why we're doing this segment. We have a little bit of hindsight here based on new trailers and new information coming out, so I think that's a pretty fair guess if I had to say. I'd say 450, I might be really stupid. I might be really off base. But anyways, Tron Ares, we'll see. Then a big jump up, because I think the next 8 here, after seeing what's going on, I've really kind of elevated some of my predictions. Although this next one, I think I've lowered it a little bit. Fantastic Four First Steps. I put it originally... Now, this is what I think is right. I think out of the 3... Actually, no, it's wrong. I take it back. I thought Fantastic Four First Steps I put at the most out of the MCU movies. It's actually between Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World. I originally put it at $700 million. Now, I think this movie has a little better shot at really hitting that high ceiling because Thunderbolts was good. It was well received. So really the problem was the perception of the MCU, Disney Plus characters, the marketing. I think Fantastic Four has that IP recognition. It has a great cast. It has the marketing going for it. I think people are interested in this movie. And so I'm not going to say that it hits $700 million anymore. I will say I think it can hit $600 million. That's where I'm going with it. And if it makes $600 million and is good, because again, I think while Thunderbolts didn't make a lot of money, it was good. I think that's a win. I think that's a huge win, honestly. So I'm not as disappointed about that as with Captain America Brave New World. So Fantastic Four First Steps, I'm going to put at $600 million. Now, coming in at number 7 is a movie that I didn't even have on this list, which is stupid. It's crazy. I've said the word stupid so many times in this segment because that's what happens when you look back at your predictions. They're dumb. F1, I don't know where it was on when I was looking at the original list, but F1, directed by Joseph Kosinski, is going to make a ton of money. And I didn't even think about this because, there's a huge F1 fan base, Formula One fan base that's going to turn out for this movie. This movie is going to make $750 million. That's my prediction. I'm just going to put it out there. This movie is going to make $750 million. That's it. That's my prediction. So F1, I really think is going to do well. Superman is number 6. And I was skeptical at first. I put it at $600 million, but at the time, if you remember, this was right after the first trailer came out. I said this movie has the highest variance of any movie on this list. This movie could make $300 million. This movie could make $1 billion. And so I put it right there in the middle, $600 million. Based on the reactions to the trailers, based on the marketing, if this movie is good, I think this movie has a chance at $1 billion. Am I saying it's going to hit $1 billion? No. I still think even if the movie is received super well, there are going to be enough people who are just not on board with whatever the vision is for Superman and the old DCEU. They have their thoughts, whether it's good or bad or whatnot. So I'm going to say Superman, I'm bumping it up here to $800 million. That seems crazy, but I'm going to put it up there. However, what might be a little bit crazier is the next movie I have up here. And there's one real reason why this next movie is at the number 5 spot above $800 million. And just slightly, I'm going to put it at 825, is How to Train Your Dragon. The reason? Lilo and Stitch. You can say what you want, but if people like your movie and they like your remake, live action remake, Lilo and Stitch, by the way, seem to relatively faithful based on the comparison clips I've been seeing from the original to the reboot. And if people like it, And it's quote unquote kid friendly. And this movie, while it's I think targeting a demographic maybe one notch above Lilo and Stitch. I love Lilo and Stitch, by the way, the new one. I don't care what people say. I love it. But anyways, then I think this movie has a chance to make bank at the box office. Plus, the reason I'm redoing this list as well is I think that what I'm realizing now is that the release window still really matters. The summer season really matters. Memorial Day, crushed. And these films are mostly in the summer windows, but the other ones are either in the Thanksgiving or Christmas window. Tron Ares is the exception. I don't know. It's in October, I think. So that is what it is. But the rest of the movies on this list are either in the summer, prime summer release dates, or Thanksgiving or Christmas. And that I think that makes a huge difference. We saw that with Memorial Day, which we just talked about with Lilo and Stitch and Mission Impossible. So How to Train Your Dragon, I think, can make $825 million. The next 4 films, I think, top 3, I think, are going to make $1 billion for sure. The next one, I was certain about this, and now I'm not so certain. Zootopia 2, I put originally, where did I put? I put it at number 3 originally at $1.25 billion. I'm going to have it at just barely scraping $1 billion. Not because I don't think people are excited about the movie, not because I don't think that based on the first movie that it's not going to make $1 billion. The first one made $1 billion. I think the novelty and the excitement has worn off. It's been a long time. It's been a whole pandemic and then some since the first movie came out. I don't know. Moana makes me hesitate because Moana 2 made $1 billion. I don't know. Did it make $1 billion? I think it made close to $1 billion if it didn't. But I hesitate because Moana 2 came out well after Moana 1 as well, but there was such excitement growing from Moana based on the streaming numbers on Disney+. I just haven't seen that with Zootopia, so I just don't know. Now, it's in the Thanksgiving window. That gives me some hope for this. But I'm going to put it at $1 billion. I'm going to lower it $250 million, which seems crazy. But when you're talking about $1 billion, I guess I don't know. It's not as crazy. But I'm a little more on the fence about this because based on the reaction to the trailers and whatnot, I've been like, yeah, I don't know if that groundswell of excitement is there. We'll see. Coming in at number 3 now, replacing it, so I flip-flopped 3 and 4, is Jurassic World Rebirth, which I originally had at $1.125 billion. I think that's pretty fair. I'm gonna leave it there. Because I think that it's coming out the 4th of July weekend. That's a holiday weekend. People seem genuinely interested in this movie based on the reaction to the trailers. The trailers have looked good. Scarlett Johansson, Mahershala Ali, Jonathan Bailey. It looks good. And I think if people see a good Jurassic World movie coming out during the 4th of July weekend, they're gonna go. Now, if this movie comes out with a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes, it might even then though, Jurassic World Dominion, I mean, it had the old cast in there, I guess, but that movie made $1 billion, but it wasn't received super well. I don't know if that same quote unquote goodwill is going to carry on with a quote unquote reboot. It's not a reboot, it's a sort of a soft reboot. We'll see, but I still think $1.125 billion seems reasonable for this film. Coming in at number 2, I had Wicked at $1.5 billion. That seems crazy. I'll put it at $1.2 billion at this point. It was December. We were all happy, and I was inflating numbers a little bit. I still think it's going to crack $1 billion based on the fact that the first film I think made $700 million. It made a lot of money. It almost made $1 billion on its own, and since then it's won a ton of Oscars. Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande have been really just icons on the internet for their social media press tour and whatnot. And the movie was really well received. Really well received. That's a tongue twister. Really well received. And I have no reason to believe that Wicked Part 2 isn't going to be. I think they filmed them back to back. I am pretty sure. I'm not 100% sure. I have no reason to believe that they didn't also nail the second part of the movie. And so the second part of the play, I should say, the musical. So I'm going to keep it at number 2 at $1.2 billion at this point. Because coming in at number 1 at $2.05 billion is what I had it originally. I don't, 2 billion, 2.05, whatever. Around $2 billion, Avatar, Fire and Ash. That's not in question. People are going to go see this movie. We should be seeing a trailer somewhat soon, though, is what I'm guessing. And so I'm kind of curious to see why we haven't as of yet, but we'll see where that goes. But guys, that's my updated list for the remaining films of 2025, the updated top grossing films. I'd love to hear your guys' predictions and thoughts in the comments down below. But for me, I have number 10, Five Nights at Freddy's 2, number 9, Tron Ares, number 8, Fantastic Four First Steps, number 7, F1, number 6, Superman, number 5, How to Train Your Dragon, number 4, Zootopia, number 3, Jurassic World Rebirth, number 2, Wicked for Good, Wicked Part 2, and number 1, Avatar, Fire and Ash. I am going to eat my words for all of these predictions. I am, because if you go back to the segment I made a while ago, look at it. It's bad. But we do this for fun. I think a couple of predictions on this list, just really quickly closing it out. First of all, the Michael Jackson biopic is probably going to get delayed. For some reason, The Passion of the Christ Part 2 is going to get delayed. I don't know. But other predictions like Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning making $750 million. Based on the opening weekend, I feel somewhat okay about that, actually. We'll see. But I feel okay about that. Elio making $450 million. I feel okay about that, actually, as well. Mickey 17, I thought was going to make $425 million. That was ridiculous. I don't know. I thought Bong Joon-ho, everyone would flock to that movie, and they didn't. So, yeah, I mean, there are a couple predictions that I think are trending in the right direction, but it's all just fun and games. It's all just for fun. I don't claim to be an expert in these things. You can go check out other YouTube channels for expertise, but yeah, guys, it's all just for fun. So let me know your predictions for the remaining top 10 2025 box office films in the comments down below. Alrighty, guys, so all of this talk about the MCU and the way that the MCU is now going to be focusing on television, where Brad Winterbaum has been talking, and if you want to check out those exact quotes and my thoughts on them, I've done segments in the past couple weeks about the new strategy for the MCU in terms of television shows and how there aren't going to be Avengers in them anymore and things like that. And it got me thinking, right? Because I think that, Marvel is going to start developing shows that will now start from season 1 and then see, kind of a pilot season, and then see if they want to do future seasons of that. And I think that that's exciting, almost like the way that they were doing it before with Defenders and Daredevil and all that kind of all those good shows. But they're doing it now with Daredevil Born Again, right? So they've launched season 1, and it looks like they're going to be doing new seasons every year, which is exciting. I think that that's a really good thing. Let's maybe get 3, 4, 5 good seasons of Daredevil Born Again and see where we go from there. But Marvel is going to be doing that. It looks like they were on track to be doing that with Terror Inc. and Strange Academy and Nova, at least piloting those shows in an interesting way. It looks like they were on pause, though, and so we'll see if that continues in the future. But, I was thinking about that, and I don't think anything thus far has precluded the MCU, because I don't think any of the comments have outright denied the fact that they could be making season 2s of shows that they've already done. And I think that it's an interesting thought exercise to think about which seasons of the MCU television up until this point, so I guess right before Daredevil Born Again, which seasons of television that the MCU has done could get season 2s, right? Let's go through all the seasons of television and think about what are the most likely TV shows to get season 2s. And I think that there is a distinct possibility that they revisit some of these characters down the line, and I'll explain why based on the criteria here. So, First of all, let's kind of set the ground rules here. There are a couple criteria that Marvel Television has laid out. Number one is that they want to focus on characters that are not Avengers kinds of characters, right? So I think that, in that respect, we're not going to get a Loki season 3, for example, not to bury the lead. But because Tom Hiddleston is a movie character, you see he's a movie actor, and I don't mean to disrespect any of the actors we're going to talk about here, but there is sort of a level of, and I think money has a part to play in this as well, of we're not going to be able to pay, Jeremy Renner that much. I mean, that was one of the things that was said recently of Jeremy Renner was not going to do Hawkeye season 2 because they just can't pay him as much. And same thing with Tom Hiddleston, for example, because he's going to be in Avengers Doomsday. And so I think that makes sense. So that's really the criteria of it's not going to be a big character, and likely it's going to be a lesser known actor in general. Now, based on the shows that that have come before, it's going to be a little tricky because a lot of these shows are headlined by very prominent actors, but we'll do our best to kind of parse through them. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to go through every single MCU show that I believe is not going to get a season 2. And I'm going to explain why very, very quickly before we dive into the 5 shows in order from least likely to most likely that I do think has a chance of a season 2. Because I think that most shows in the MCU thus far, or at least over half of them, have no chance of season 2. And I'll explain why. So quickly, WandaVision. I think the story's done. I don't think that there's any chance that we get a WandaVision season 2. Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Sam Wilson is an Avenger. Sam Wilson is transitioning into the movies, and he's Captain America. He's not getting a season 2. Loki, I think for the same reasons, Tom Hiddleston, big actor, Avengers level actor, he's going to be in Doomsday. I also think that his story is just kind of wrapped up at this point. So no, I don't think Loki season 3 is going to happen. Hawkeye, I think is for that reason of they're not going to do shows with Avengers anymore. I think that Hawkeye season 2, as much as I would like a Hawkeye season 2, I really would. I don't think it's going to happen. I think even Haley Steinfeld, if you just did a Hawkeye season 2 and it was just Haley Steinfeld, I think that'd be, honestly, a big letdown. Not that Haley Steinfeld as Kate Bishop is bad, but it's Hawkeye, right? So I don't think that that's going to happen. we're going to skip over the next few shows here because I think you know why. Let's move on to Secret Invasion. First of all, didn't do well. Second of all, what's the story going to be? Third of all, Samuel L. Jackson, I think, is just too expensive to make another show of. And I think that is it, right? We're not going to count Werewolf by Night. We're not going to count the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. I think that's about it. The other 5 shows, I believe in some capacity, have a good shot, or at least a shot, of getting a season 2, and we'll talk about my reasons why. I'm just double checking here that I didn't miss a show, because I feel like there are more shows than that, but I guess that's it. Yeah, that's about it. So the other 5 shows, I believe, have a shot of getting season 2, and we'll talk about that in order. So going from least likely to most likely, let's talk about it. Number 5 is Echo. Now, Echo, I don't think is going to get another season, but you can see the potential here, right? Because Echo, well, it wasn't terribly received. It wasn't particularly positively received. And for my opinion as well, it's just the most, I don't remember the show. It just kind of happened and then you forget about it. And that's not a great thing for the MCU. That's why it's pretty low in my rankings. I don't hate the show at all. I watched it and I was like, okay, that was that. I think though there is potential. And do we remember, does everyone remember the first trailer for Echo that came out? Everyone was like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. And I think that there is a potential to make a season 2, especially now that Daredevil is kind of living in the TV world again, and he's probably not going to appear in the movies. You could bring Kingpin back, You could bring Daredevil back. Yeah, I think that would be interesting. I just think that the show wasn't received all that well. The one thing working for it, again, no disrespect meant, just in terms of general, like how much these actors would be, I guess, paid. Like Robert Downey Jr. is going to be paid so much money for Doomsday. Alako Cox, I think that she's a name that you could definitely bring back for Echo. And I think that you could tell side stories with this character. I just don't know how many people would be all that interested. And I think that that's why it's number 5. But I think there's a chance for it. So that's number 5. Number 4, She-Hulk Attorney at Law. This is a show I maintain that while it's not my favorite show at all, I think the bad episodes in this show, or at least the parts that I don't like, are quite just unappealing to me. I would really not like to rewatch some of the episodes of She-Hulk Attorney at Law, but I actually think in general there are more good episodes in the show than people give it credit for. The first few episodes I think are great. The stuff with Abomination is really good. I think that the stuff at the beginning with her getting her powers is fine. It's fun with Hulk, and I think that some of the stuff here later on as well, with Daredevil, is really good. It's just the stuff in the middle, like the wedding episode, is really not great. The stuff with the retreat was just really bad. The finale was really weird. But again, I think there is potential here, right, to do a season 2 and to really make it great. A couple things that I think prevent this from happening. Number 1 is that Tatiana Maslany is a pretty well-known actress, and I think that getting her to come back would be a bit of a stretch in terms of money and just her schedule and whatnot. Number 2, though, is a thing that I have been thinking about, because again, I think that, even though the first season wasn't received as well as I think Marvel had hoped, I think that there's always room to make a season 2 just based on the potential of how it's going to go. But really the big thing that I'm worried about is CGI and budget. These TV shows can't have, at this point, as big of a budget. I think that Brad Winterbaum talked about the fact that the TV shows just can't. The margins are lower. And unless She-Hulk is in maybe 2% of the show, the budget on this is going to be crazy high. And so I just don't know how they're going to be able to do that on a TV budget. We'll see. But I think that there is definitely potential to do a season 3. Speaking of 3, number 3, Agatha All Along. I think that obviously this show ended on a note where you could do a season 2. I think people generally liked it a lot. And I think that Catherine Hahn would definitely be down to come back as Ghost Agatha, and Joe Locke would be able to come back as Billy. There's unresolved business here. I don't know if it's going to get resolved in the Vision show, which Brad Winterbaum has said this is going to be the last Avengers-centric show. So we'll see. But I think that this is definitely a show that could get a season 2. And I wouldn't be surprised, honestly. There's been a lot of back and forth. We've talked about it a lot over the last couple of months of, being entered into awards consideration and whatnot. And I think that there's a decent chance that we get into season 2 territory. I think that 3, 2, and 1, these shows are very, not very likely, but I think in the realm of possibility that we get a season 2. Coming in at number 2, Moon Knight. I think really the only thing holding me back from putting Moon Knight as number 1, because I think Moon Knight needs a season 2, the more that I think about it. The one thing holding me back is that Oscar Isaac is probably going to be a very expensive and hard to get actor to come back for the MCU. Say what you will about Moon Knight, and I've said my piece about Moon Knight. I think it's messy. The concept, though, is fantastic. And some of the execution of that concept is so good. I've said, first couple episodes of Moon Knight rival some of the best television that Marvel has done ever. I think it lines up with even your Daredevils and whatnot. I love the concept. I just think the execution towards the end was so sloppy and so rushed, and it just was baffling to me. But you get this character to come back and have Jake Lockley be, I don't know, the villain, or have someone else be the villain. This is a show that could really benefit from a season 2. And I would very much like to see it. So, Moon Knight season 2. But number 1, this is by far and away to me the easiest choice. It's Miss Marvel. I think Miss Marvel could easily be the show that continues to get season 2, season 3, season 4 every single year. First of all, Iman Vellani, Kamala Khan. She's amazing. And again, I mean, she's not as established of an actress that you could definitely have her come back and be a recurring lead on this TV show. The cast of characters is great. You can bring all of them back. And this is a show that you could have cameos from Avengers, like Brad Winterbaum was talking about. And yes, she's transitioned into the movies, right? She was in the Marvels. And I'm sure she'll show up again in a movie or so. I think, though, that this is just the perfect scenario to bring her back to Jersey and have adventures in Jersey every year. I think that Miss Marvel is 100%. If you were going to make a season 2 of any of these 5 shows, Miss Marvel is the one. So guys, what do you think about this? Which MCU TV show that has come out before that has a previous season, what do you think is the most likely one to get a season 2? I think that there are some very good candidates out there, but I want to hear you guys' thoughts. Let me know in the comments down below. Alrighty guys, we have what I believe to be, and it may not seem like it just off the bat, but I believe that this news that we're going to talk about is going to be consequential in movie and television history. Just as, and we didn't know it at the time, nobody knew it at the time, but just as over 20 years ago, when they first cast Harry, Ron, and Hermione, Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint as those titular characters, we didn't know it then, but they had just made cinema history by casting 3 actors who would go on to have amazing careers. Although, Rupert Grint probably the least of them, but even still, I mean, he's had a good career. But Emma Watson, obviously, and then Daniel Radcliffe as well. They launched their careers, but most importantly for that franchise, they made 8 films together. They grew up together, and now, hopefully, HBO is going to capture lightning in a bottle again, because it looks like the HBO show, the reboot of Harry Potter, has found its 3 leads. Now, I say it doesn't seem that consequential on the surface because we don't know these kids. I don't know these kids. I would be shocked if any of you guys had heard of these kids before, because guess what? When Radcliffe, Grint, and Watson were cast, a few decades ago, nobody knew who they were because they were kids, right? And so I've never heard of these kids. I'm going to read from an article from Variety where they talk a little bit about their credits. So they've done some acting before. Most impressively, though, these 3 kids came out of a casting process of over 30,000 actors. And that's got to say something, right? So it really shows that the studio had utmost confidence. And you have to, right? You have to have the assurance. Because not only, when they cast the original 3... sure, they probably had visions of making the entire franchise, but they didn't know if it was going to work. Like, it could have been done after 1 movie. This HBO show, obviously, is not guaranteed to work. This could also be done after 1 season, but they have the model set up for them. They have everything already there as a template, right, of how they want to do this, of having these kids grow up together and filming these seasons year after year. And these kids are going to be together for 10 years, and they're going to grow into young adults, and it's going to be crazy to watch now that we're aware of what's going to happen, right? And so it's really incredible. But again, we don't know these kids. So let's get to the news. And I'm just going to read from this Variety article. Dominic McLaughlin will play the role of Harry Potter. Arabella Stanton as Hermione Granger. And Alistair Stout is Ron Weasley. So those are names that, again, I've very foreign names to me. It's just in terms of I've never said those names aloud at all in my life. But then again, maybe in 5 years, those are names that are going to be just as synonymous as Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, and Rupert Grint were at the time. So I'm very excited about this. Now, another interesting thing here about this Variety article, and it seems like they're affirming the cast, the rest of the supporting cast, not the rest of them, but, a good amount of the supporting cast, which had been rumored. We'd made segments about this, but it looks like this Variety article is basically setting it in stone. I haven't seen an official press release for any of this kind of stuff, but the Variety article says they joined fellow cast members John Lithgow as Albus Dumbledore, Janet McTeer as Minerva McGonagall, Papa Isidore as Severus Snape, Nick Frost as Rubeus Hagrid, Luke Thalin, I haven't heard that name, as Quirrellus Quirrellus? I don't know. Quirrell, I just know him as Quirrell. And Paul Whitehouse as Argus Filch. So it seems like the rest of the cast is pretty set. Again, we've talked about my thoughts on John Lithgow. A great actor. He's going to be 90 plus when he ends his role as Dumbledore, if he, God willing, ends his role as Dumbledore. So I don't know. But guys, this is a consequential day. I mean, these kids, I don't know how old they are, but they look young. They look, honestly, they look like they have that kind of same energy and same vibe as Emma Watson, Daniel Radcliffe, and Rupert Grint did as young kids. So I'm excited about them. I don't know anything about their acting abilities, but I trust that they passed a process of 30,000 actors, and I'm hoping for the best here. So, guys, what do you think about this news? We officially have, or I think it's official, right? Maybe it's not official, but it's being reported by all the major outlets that we have our cast for the big three, quote unquote, the big three of Harry, Ron, and Hermione for Harry Potter on HBO Max. Let me know in the comments what you think about this down below. Alrighty, guys, let's talk about the finale, the season finale to season 2 of The Last of Us. This is going to be a full spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen any episodes, really, of season 2 of The Last of Us, because for those of you who don't know, we have now officially wrapped up The Last of Us, and maybe it wasn't obvious because, well, we'll talk about this, but I think season 2 really, it didn't really finish out the season, narratively speaking, so you'd be forgiven if you didn't realize that this was the finale of The Last of Us season 2. That we'll talk about that. But this is going to be a full spoiler discussion, so if you have not seen any of the episodes of The Last of Us Season 2, no worries, just make sure to save this segment, save the podcast, save the video for later, whatever platform you're watching, and then come back once you have. Or if you don't care about spoilers, or if you have seen the episode, then welcome. Let's dive right on in. I, as always, will give some context for how I've been feeling throughout the season. And for those of you who are asking why I do this every episode, for those of you who are saying, I've heard this before, it's a broken record, I like to treat every single segment as if, and this happens, new viewers come in, and they can come in at any point, any video, any segment, any podcast episode. And so I want to make sure that everybody is fully on board. So apologies if this is all familiar to you, if you've been listening to the podcast for a while now. But anyways, giving some context, I'm a big fan of The Last of Us Season 1. I thought the drama, the character work, and of course, just the action, the visuals, the stakes, but really the character work that was done in Season 1 was phenomenal. And so Season 2, again, not knowing almost anything about the games, knowing that there was something controversial that happened, and I assumed it was a character's death. I did not expect it to happen in episode 2 of Season 2, and actually, from what I've heard, even people who had played the games didn't even think it was going to happen that early. But, episode 1, I thought, great reintroduction into the show, setting some stakes. There's some tension between Joel and Ellie that gets fleshed out later on in the season. And then episode 2 was obviously the big bomb, the nuclear explosion of Joel getting killed. And then episode 3, I thought, okay, we're getting back into it. We just want to settle into our grief a little bit and try to move on with Ellie and Dina. But episode 4 was when I started to get a little bit worried. Episode 4, I was like, we're past halfway in this season and we haven't gotten anywhere. What's going on? And then episode 5, while yes, it was a good return to form in terms of what I expected from an episode of The Last of Us, still was not really pushing us that far forward into the story, which again worried me. And episode 6 was completely a flashback episode, a beautiful flashback episode. I loved the episode in isolation, but in terms of the overall story, it had me worried. And so entering the finale, I was very not worried. I mean, worried is maybe too strong of a word, but I was concerned that this finale, there was just no plausible way for this finale to tie up narratively, the threads that would have been going on in season 2. As in, there was no way for me to come out of season 2, episode 7 saying, oh, wow, okay, everything makes sense, and I feel super satisfied by this season. Because again, even though I've liked a lot of what I've seen, it just didn't feel like it was possible. Lo and behold, episode 7 comes out, and I think I was right, at least for me. I'm nowhere near satisfied with the narrative that was told in season 2. Again, it's not to say that the parts that make up this season weren't good. Almost everything in this season that was done was really good. It's just that it didn't come together in a way that told a cohesive story. And I'm frustrated because I feel like I've been seeing this. I said this in my immediate reaction. I've been seeing this too much recently, where shows are like, oh, we know we have next season, so we're just not going to resolve the brunt of the story. I mean, this whole season after Joel's death was supposed to be about Abby versus Ellie. And this was a 5-minute scene in season 2, episode 7. I know people, I know, there's more to the game. I know there's more to the story. I get it. I totally get that. But you have to take creative liberties, I think. You have to try to wrap up the story that you're telling in this season in particular. If you're going to set out to set expectations and just not have Abby, come out in any of the episodes until the last 5 minutes of this season. Basically she comes in episode 1 for a little bit, tiny bit, and then episode 2, she's the main character, or not the main, she's one of the main characters, and then she just doesn't appear until the last 5 minutes. That's frustrating. And I'm not just talking about Abby, by the way. For those of you who might be saying, well, you're just frustrated, you didn't get to see the resolution between Abby and Ellie. Let me just talk about all the things that didn't get really resolved here. And again, just to recap what I talked about last week as well in terms of format for what we're doing here. I liked what I did last episode, where we didn't do the whole play-by-play, just kind of did my thoughts and reference my notes here and there. And I think we're going to do that from now on for these spoiler discussions. But anyways, let me just talk about some other things that didn't get resolved. What is this war between WLF and these scars? That hardly got fleshed out. We know what is happening, like literally what is happening, that they're fighting each other and there's some prophet group and they worship some prophet and the WLF is mad at them. We know nothing about what is going on with this conflict. And I'm saying this again as somebody who, you have to understand, I haven't played the game, so you might understand everything that's going on, but if you have played the games, try to put yourself in the shoes of somebody like myself who has not played the games at all and doesn't know anything. I have no idea what's going on with this conflict between WLF and the Scars, other than they're fighting. And there's a religious figure. Okay, that's great. I don't know what else there is to say about that. You introduce Isaac as a character. He's in there for maybe 20 minutes of screen time. Dina's pregnant, and that is gonna get discussed next episode or next season, I guess, because Jesse is dead, and that's terrifying. That was horrific. Also, what was it? And this is just my own. This has nothing to do with anything. This is just my own personal thing. What was it with all the medical stuff in this episode of trying to cut things out and clean up wounds? I hate that stuff. Like, a movie like Deadpool and Wolverine, for some reason, is totally fine for me. But as soon as you start getting into the medical, like, oh, we need to bandage this and cut this open, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it was just all over this episode. Anyways, that was a whole aside. But yeah, so we have all of that stuff going on there. And it's just, like, what was Abby up to? So I guess the entire season 3 is going to be between day 1 of Seattle, and which was teased at the end of this season, and then day 3, which is when I guess they meet again, which I did clock that. Actually, I was kind of proud of myself, because when that day 3 title card popped up during the last episode, I was like, that's weird. What does that mean? Like, why are we referencing day 3? And then lo and behold, it was a call, not a call for foreshadowing. That you're going to set up this timeline here, where at the end of the episode, I'm presuming it flashes back a couple days to what Abby was doing a couple days ago. So I'm sure that's going to be basically what season 3 is about. We've heard reports and rumors that, I think Catherine O'Hara said this, where season 3 is really going to be Abby's story. Great, that's fine and all. But again, I don't know. And then also ending on the cliffhanger of Ellie getting shot, allegedly, although we don't see it happen. So if we don't see it happen, I'm going to assume it doesn't happen. You can let me know in the comments down below. I think it's safe to say in this moment that Ellie's not dead, because I think this would have been, I don't know, it would have been way more obvious that she would have been dead if that happened. So I know that this show is not afraid to kill characters off, but I think that they probably wanted to sideline her for a little bit while they focus on Abby next season. So that is what it is. But yeah, I feel like this season, kind of zooming out a little bit, because, we'll talk about this episode, just some more things about this episode briefly before we get to that. A lot of medical stuff here. And then, I think that there's some really good conflicts being set up with Ellie, where you're frustrated at her because she's making the wrong choice, I think, of going after Abby at the expense of someone like Tommy. But that her rage is starting to consume her. And she wants to do the right thing, but she's so conflicted by her anger and her rage, and so you understand that. But she ends up making some really bad choices, and she kills two of Abby's friends, and that leads to the part at the end. as well, and you get more of a conversation between Jesse and Ellie as well, about Jesse being a father, but that is going to be just a tragedy moving forward, because now I hope Dean is okay at the end of the season. I don't think I saw her at the end of the episode, but yeah, I mean, the episode itself, I thought it was shot beautifully. I loved the scene where Ellie was on the speedboat heading across the coast of Seattle, and I thought that was shot so beautifully in the rain and the thunderstorm. It's great. And really, taking a step back and zooming out, which is what I wanted to do at the end of this spoiler discussion here, I think what's frustrating to me about this season, like I said in my immediate reaction, is you can take these 7 episodes, and there is a world in which these 7 episodes are 7 episodes of one of the best seasons of television ever, and it's like a 12-episode season of The Last of Us, and these 7 episodes are kind of, plopped in there, and there's just more to flesh out this story. I'm not saying, by the way, for the record, that they should have just made The Last of Us Part 2, the game, 1 season. I'm not saying that, because I fully am on board with the idea of, if you think the story is big enough and rich enough to split it, that's fine. But that doesn't mean literally split it, like just cut it off, right? And I'm not saying that's what they did here. I know that they intentionally cut it off at a certain point because they felt like that was a narrative breaking point. That's fine. But you have to justify that by closing up whatever loop this story was trying to tell. And this story it's not a closed loop, it's an open loop, in my opinion. And it's incredibly frustrating, and not because, not in small part because we have to wait probably 1 or 2 years now until the next season of The Last of Us. And I don't think that's insignificant, because I mean, if this next season was coming out in 3 weeks, okay, maybe you kind of bite your tongue. But I mean, now what? You waited another 2 years for this, and it's crazy. So I mean, again, I really liked a lot of stuff in this season. This is an instance where, and I feel like I rarely say this with movies and TV shows. You usually say something like the sum is greater than the parts that make it up, right? But in this case, I think the parts are vastly superior than the sum. And the sum is 7 episodes just kind of not eclectically. I don't want to say that either, because there was very clearly, thought put behind what led to one, another thing, and the emotional stakes behind each character. I'm not saying that it's just random episodes. I just think that they got to the end and they were like, hey, we can kind of move on, with this next part of the story in season 3, and that's it. So we'll just have a little confrontation at the end, and then Ellie gets shot or whatever the implication was there, and then we'll move on. So I'm frustrated by that. Again, I'm not saying that The Last of Us season 2 is a bad season of television. Not at all. I really enjoyed a vast majority of what I watched this season. And by enjoyed, I mean, was traumatized by a good portion of it, but in a good way, if that even makes sense at all. I'm just frustrated. I know I've said that at least 20 times in this segment, but it's really just, I wish I could have come out of this season with the same feeling that I had after I watched season 1, where I went, wow. I mean, devastating at the end, right? With Joel's lie to Ellie, but still just an amazing season of television. I wish I could have come out saying that, and as it is, I'm like, yeah, I mean, I wish it was better. I wish the season was better, and that's odd because some of the episodes themselves are probably Emmy worthy. I hope Pedro Pascal gets an Emmy for this, because my gosh, his performance in this. So that's really what the most frustrating thing is about this whole thing is. But guys, what did you think? Now that we have this in the rear view mirror, what did you guys think of season 2 of The Last of Us and the finale, episode 7 of The Last of Us? Let me know in the comments down below. Did you enjoy the season more than season 1, or did you enjoy it less? And are you looking forward to a potential season 3? Not a potential, probably a season 3. It's almost definitely going to happen. Let me know in the comments down below. And guys, that will do it for episode number 80 of the Access Blockbusters Pod. Thank you so much for joining us. As always, it is just amazing. It's a privilege to be able to talk with you guys every single week. I really appreciate those of you who have stuck around till the very end, or even if you just skipped around, that is still totally amazing as well. Guys, make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. Leave a comment down below. We are on the road to 2,000 subscribers, hopefully by the end of this year, so help us get there. That would mean just so much to me. And guys, the audio-only platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Overcast, are available as well, so leave a rating, leave a review. That will do it for me for the Access Blockbusters Pod episode number 80, and I will see you guys in the next one.